Welcome to another episode of the 100% podcast with me, your host, Harry Purdy. Today, I am joined by a new guest. He started his career as a fitness coach online and has branched his way into being a business consultant. He is apparently our Nan's favorite mentor as well. Welcome to the show, Mr. Dan Smith.
Amazing. Thank you, mate.
You're welcome. First question, I'm going to dive in. Why are you my Nan's favorite mentor? I've got to ask.
You know what? It was, when people massively overthink their bios and they're like, I need this bio's got to say, it's got to be perfect. And then I got really bored of like people asking the question, like, oh, my bio okay? I'm like, your bio doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. And it was done as a bit of a test. So initially I changed it, not knowing that once you change it, you can't change it back for 2 weeks, I think, something like that.
Yeah, yeah. It's like 90,
I
is
put
it
it on
90,
there.
90 days maybe? I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, well, I'm going with that now. And then I must have got 10 messages, like, and just people noticing it going, oh, this is really like hilarious. And like, why? And I was like, I don't know, to be honest. It was just something that popped in my head. And I thought, I'm just going to go with that because people are like, oh, you need to put something there that's like online coach or like fat loss specialist. And I was like, nah, I'm going to go with this. And I still get it now. Like people come find my profile from like Threads is really one that happens the most. They go onto the profile and they're like, oh my God, instantly I'm following you because like your bio. And I'm like, oh, cool, it works. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, if ever there was something that fits into the whole process of being a coach online or whatever, it sends me straight back to when I first started. And I watched a video from, I'm pretty sure it was Jay Alderton actually, that it was like your bio really matters and your headshot as well. It was like a big kind of conversation around that as well. But obviously, if your profile is dividing the public in a sense of some people don't want to follow you just because of that, but some people do stay and they do see what you've got to say, you've almost done half the job already, right?
yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm sure some people are don't even get it. Or I mean, there's nothing to get. I don't really know where it comes from. I think I saw something similar somewhere else, and I was like, I quite like that. But then, like, you're right. You are gonna the people who find it funny or whatever are gonna stay around, and then the other people are gonna go, oh, I don't get that. And you're not my people, so I don't really care. Um, but yeah, I agree with like the headshot stuff. I think it's nice to have a clear picture of who you are, and you can see them, and there's a name there, and then you can like, cool, I can resonate with this person a little bit. So that's important. But overthinking the bio too much, and it's not the one. The content matters more, and your message overall is the big thing, really. So yeah.
I mean, the journey from where you were originally and what you were doing online has been quite a big one, I imagine. What has what transcended with the change from being a general fitness coach to now doing what you're doing as a business mentor or consultant?
I still coach. I still coach. I still coach like a handful of clients.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah,
Still got
still,
your finger in the pie, so to speak.
yeah. I think it's coaching in general that I really enjoy, and also when you get to work with other coaches, what I'm finding now is the thing that gets me really passionate about is actually being able to treat it again like their business is individual to them, and they're all at different stages and they all do different things. And for me, that's really important that you meet them there and then you become fully invested in that. And then the problem solving element is really excites me. I get into like, okay, where are the problems at the moment? Where are the bottlenecks? And we can figure that out. Similar to coaching, training nutrition clients, it was more about problem solving. It's always been that for me. That's the stuff that got me really excited. And yeah, the clients are still coaching at the moment. I've had for years now, and I always joke on that they just won't leave. So if it's good, you get to that stage where you've coached people for some of them, like the longest is 7 years now, and I feel like you're doing different things at that point to when you first start with someone, and you would be because the relationship it evolves and is different, and it becomes more about like the programming side, but also like specific targets on what they want to achieve, and it becomes a little bit less involved sometimes because after that time you're more like good friends now. So I will probably at some point, as people do stop, like that's probably going to be. I don't actively bring any new coaching clients on in terms of that. So yeah, the transfer over was more about I was doing some stuff anyway. People kept asking me, like coaches were like, "Will you mentor me?" And I was like, "Nah, it's not really my thing." And it kept happening. And I worked with one guy for free basically. I was just like, "I'll help you out with some stuff." And then from that, a few other people got involved, and then I started charging for it. And then I got asked to basically head up like the mentoring team for an online fitness business company at the time. And I was already doing it. So I was like, okay, cool. It kind of fits in there. They've already got established audience and it makes sense. It's what I really am enjoying. So I did that. And then that kind of ended. Actually, I'm fussed about saying how it ended, but it didn't end in a great way. So with that in mind, I was like, I'm doing this myself anyway. And I felt like I was basically running someone else's business. And I was like, well, that's not why I'm doing this. And even, I don't know if in your back research and everything. So I used to be in the fire service. That was like my job. Say my job. It was like, it's not a 9 to 5 either. It's like just shit. It's my job that I've done for 11 years. So I was still doing that. And at the time I was managing like coaching clients, and then I was mentoring coaches, and then I was working shifts. And it got to a point where my wife was like, I don't see you anymore. We don't do it. Like we just pass we just pass in ships. She actually said that. And I was like, yeah, probably need to do something about it. It's like I didn't stay in that job for the money. It wasn't like I didn't enjoy the job. I really did. But then I had to make a decision, and at the time it just made sense to kind of go all in on that. So yeah, I left, and it's been great. I haven't regretted it. I do miss certain bits. I miss the people in their fire service, but I don't miss the job. I did enough time in there, I feel. So that's where I am now, 5 years later. Yeah.
I like to ask the people that have been in the industry this question because I'm relatively fresh to the online fitness/fitness industry, really. What have been the biggest changes that you've seen over the last few years, including the COVID period as well?
Yeah, COVID was the biggest change. That just blew things up in a positive way, but also the after effects of that now. I think we're only really figuring out. They're only kind of getting to that stage now,
Yeah.
because when it happened, were you coaching them? Were you doing stuff at that
I
point?
was podcasting, not coaching. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it was weird because I remember when it all happened in the gym shut down, and I was like, oh shit, what's going to happen? Like, it's just everything's going to collapse. And actually, it was the opposite. Like, it just went mad. Like, it was the busiest we've been. And then in terms of like the business side, the mentoring side, that again, because then a lot of trainers didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to then work online. So that kind of catapulted that business really, and it was good. But yeah, that's probably like the biggest change I've seen. And then now we're kind of dealing with the after effects of that, because the marketplace has then gone like with so many people in this space after that. And it's also flooded it with not very good coaches as well, which I'm seeing now. Thankfully, there's people out there doing stuff around coaching skill sets and the art of coaching. I think that's a good thing. So more of that. But then it got to a stage where there's so many people like I need to go online, and they didn't really understand what online coaching was. And it's just like, oh, if I just post on social media a few posts and a few selfies and that, and I'll just have clients. And like, it doesn't really work like that. It's a separate job and a separate entity in itself. And the work involved in it is still there. It's not as easy as what some people might make out. You are still going to work ridiculously hard, and you're probably going to work long hours at certain points to do that at the start point, definitely. So I think there was this sense of not knowing what it meant, and also a little bit of entitlement. I always felt this. I felt a massive sense of entitlement with some coaches were just like, well, why aren't I getting clients? I'm like, well, what do you expect to happen here? Like,
Mm.
you don't just have a social media account. It happens. Like, there are things that need to put in place, and it blew up a big kind of hole for marketing, I think, in general, where personal trainers and coaches didn't really have to worry about that before. They were just like, I just go and do my job, do really well, and that's what drives the business, which is still true to an extent. But now more so, having an understanding of marketing is really important. And if you're not prepared to kind of put yourself in that position, then you will kind of get left behind. And things move quick, right? Things are definitely speeding up in terms of the technology and AI and everything. So, get involved with it now whilst you can.
How much of an impact do you think AI is going to have on the whole fitness industry and marketing in general?
It's already having an impact now. It's the way the stuff's changing, the way AI has evolved already in the short time frame it's been here. We're seeing it. We use it a lot with some of the stuff we build out with coaches for like chatbots and social tools that we use now to harness AI's power, which is great. I think if you can use it to complement your skill set and your coaching business, it's a really good tool. The thing I'm seeing a lot is maybe using it in not the wrong way, not using it the wrong way, but like using it to just create content for you and actually just going, right, I'm going to generate content and post it. Like, I think we should use it to research and maybe shift some ideas and maybe have an element of like interacting with it to find out, like using its tools to be able to skip the part of like being able to research like in long term. So you can actually like skip a lot of time there, because before you had to go through to maybe like different sites and things and you'd have to look stuff up. And then now we've got the ability to actually use this tool. If you input it right, you can grab that information. But what I see is like people using it to generate content. And I think like that's where you're not going to see the impact you want from it. If you're just using it to tick a box of like, I just need to create content, AI, can you just create me a year's worth of social media? And it will do it, and it'll be shit. So don't do it.
I did as an experiment. So every Monday I release a newsletter, and it's around my week and what lessons I've learned, and I'll try and like put kind of a call to action at the end of it, which we'll talk about call to actions as well, I'm sure, on this show. But I was like, I just wanted to do it as a little bit of a, what can AI do to match how I write? And I gave it 4 or 5 keywords, told it like the mini story of what happened, and got it to create this email. And I read it and I was like, that just sounds honestly nothing like me. There's about 1,000 different emojis that I'd never use. And to be fair, Dan, I'm not sure how many of the readers that do read my newsletter would have known that I'd not wrote it. But I felt cheap. I felt so cheap. I felt so missold. Like I would never have done it anyway. And if I would have released that, what it had wrote me, I would have changed it so much anyway. But I think it could be really easy to think that this thing is going to solve all of your problems, when actually there's so much more underneath the surface that you may need to solve as a coach, including myself, by the way. I'm absolutely not the best marketer and I'm not the best salesperson yet. I'm on the way to trying to find the best ways that work for me. But to think that AI is going to solve your problems on that front is quite a dangerous thing, right?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like it just gives you that false sense of security that AI will write this for me. And you're thinking about why someone wants to market themselves in a certain way is to build their business and grow it. Okay, I'm going to use this because basically I don't want to do the work involved in, and it's not like you have to become this expert marketer. That's still not your job, but having an understanding is going to help you. And copywriting is especially one of those tools that I feel is, and skills that is really important. And going back to when I first got into like the online side of stuff, really getting into like understanding how important copywriting was, and was fortunate to have a lot of kind of touch points with people who were really good at that, and then learning from them was one of the best things to ever happen in terms of how to drive that business. And still now, like I still try and practice that as a skill set, and that then transfers into writing scripts or like for reels or for video, and to then write your emails or for your website and things. So it's important to still have that. But I feel like if you look at AI, it's like some coaches will go, I'm not very good with copywriting, and it's almost like before you've even got into it, they'll say that. And it's the same with like technology, isn't it? I'm not very techy. I'm not a tech person.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. We probably have to just understand that, you can set a Stripe account up, or Calendly's okay to use, right? I'm not a tech person. You haven't even given it a try. Come on. So it's almost like giving up before you can. And then AI comes along, goes, oh, you can just write stuff in here and I'll do it for you. Okay, but then you're not getting the outcome you want because you just gone sidetracked it and gone, oh, this tool will do it for me. And then you get annoyed because actually you're not growing the business, and it's no one's fault but your own.
Yeah. In
Yeah.
terms of copy, then writing, there has been a shift, hasn't there, towards more video form content against a written post, like a stationary photo with backed up with some words around the subject that you're talking about. How important do you believe copy is still, writing, in terms of making content, and also what makes good copying as compared to bad copy?
Yeah, so from a writing perspective, in terms of that, and then transferring it to video, you still need. I mean, some people are really great on video naturally. They're just they either that's what they are, or they've practiced it for a long time. And I always feel that Snapchat was a big part of that for me. You know, Snapchat was like, I used to go out on a walk and just film the walk, and I'd have a topic, and I go and cover this topic on my Snapchat. And I used to do church road rants, it was called, and I'd rant
Nice.
about a topic, and that built confidence, like talking on camera. And then Instagram started doing stories, so just moved to that. But now with Reels, it's like you still need to have an understanding of being able to write effective copy, because you should really script out some of that stuff. And even if it's a short reel, I still script either the structure or the bullets or whatever I'm going to talk about, because it stops you from going off on tangents and just including stuff that is just fluff. And you know how important attention is nowadays, and how it's not that I don't think people have short attention spans. It's just the information that's being conveyed has to be relevant to what they want to listen to, because people will still watch hours of YouTube videos if they're interested in it, and they'll still read long sales pages and long emails if they're interested in it. So that means that the effectiveness of copy has to be there in both formats, because even for videos now, you should still structure out what you're going to say in it and script it to an extent. So it's still important. Do you ask me a question about like what was good and bad copy?
Yeah, I'm maybe it's a really detailed question to answer, but I'm sure I'm adamant that you've got it because you can do it. When you look at somebody's post that's potentially not the best in terms of how they're structuring it for their audience, compared to somebody who's wrote a post who's structured it in a really good way that's going to grab somebody's attention with writing, what are the main differences normally?
So I would say really understanding the audience is key, because that comes across a lot. So you'll see this in content from coaches is, do you want to get results like this, or increase your confidence? Do you want to some other ones you hear like skyrocket this, or there's phrases that get sent, life-changing result, life-changing outcomes. All these are phrases that they get used because they're used, other people use them, and it's just easy to use, but they don't tell you anything. They don't explain what those results are to anyone who's potentially watching that or reading it. It doesn't give them any detail, so they can't relate to it. But then, so you're not going to connect on those points of emotion. So having a really a deep understanding of the audience enables you to then communicate things that they're going to relate to. So content that makes them feel seen and heard and respected and understood, that content is really powerful. It's not easy to do, because no one wants to spend the time getting deep into their ideal client and their audience. But once you do, everything becomes easier, because then you can communicate, and everyone's like, oh, I read your post, and it's like you were in my head. That's some kind of stuff that we want. So that's really important. And then storytelling as well is the other thing. Like people have connected on stories for, I don't know, thousands of years now. So getting that into your content is really effective. That could be done by written or by video. So none of that have to be like long, drawn out stories. It's just having a way to take a situation or something that's happened and tell it in a way that someone can follow along with. And you can do that in a reel that's 20 seconds long. You can just tell a story through like changing the scenes and the environment and things. And so I feel like understanding your audience and storytelling, if you can nail those things, you'll do really well. And the coaches who do nail those things or improve them, you see the difference in the way their content is reacted to, and also their business, because it drives more people, more awareness. So those two things definitely.
In terms of, is growth on social media something that you get your clients to focus on, or do you get them to focus specifically on who they have in their audience already?
Yeah, it's a good question, because growth in terms of followers doesn't necessarily equate to business growth. It's more of I say vanity metric. It depends what you want to do with it, right? If you want to become a influencer, or because that's a job now, right? So then you're going to be doing things that are different with content to someone who's trying to grow a coaching business. So I don't focus particularly on growth in terms of followers. I would look at some growth. We should be seeing potentially like a trend up over, you know, if you look at it over a longer period of time, there should be a trend, but then it depends on the account as well, because you might have people who have changed their audience, and then so there's people in there that's not relevant to anymore, it would drop off, but then you should see new people come in. So yeah, I don't really focus on growth too much, but more like the content itself has to be relevant to that audience. And this is the tricky thing, because people get sucked into, I create content to drive views, and that's cool, but then that content doesn't necessarily then connect with the audience, so it's a different thing. And some of that content that connects with the audience has low views compared to that stuff, so then people get disheartened. They're like, oh, it's only got 500 views. I'm like, yeah, but how many people, you know, messaged you after that? How many people like reached out to you? Because that's the type of content that's going to get that to happen, rather than something that's got hundreds of thousands of views that's not really relevant. And I say there's a place for both, because I quite like using social media for just, I think it's a great place to test stuff out. I find humor is a big part of stuff for me, and like it's one of the core values that I try and instill through my social media. Probably too much at times, but I feel like connection from social media, especially if you're using Instagram, like people come there for entertainment. They don't come there for information so much. So entertainment's a big part. And if you can get that across in your content, then you're going to connect on that level. You've evoked an emotion that people resonate with. The same with when they feel something from your content through resonating with a story or an experience or a case study. Humor still does that same thing. So we want to try and evoke that through content. And I try and do that. But yeah, to answer your question, it's not really about the growth as such. It's more the content itself and what do you want from that piece of content? What's the objective? What's the aim of it? Because I don't know, you might have had this, some of the content that just doesn't get any kind of, you're like, oh, that content's gone nowhere. But then sometimes that's the content that will get people reaching out or messaging you after it. And sometimes those people never interact in your content, and they will reach out to work with you, and they're like, I've been following you for years. I see all your content. I'm like, you don't do anything with it. Right. Yeah.
It is, yeah, it's just, it can be a frustrating environment and world, social media, for sure. You mentioned in your chat there around social media and the growth and how you portray or how you want to come across on socials as a bit more jovial, bit more jokey. And in my opinion, this is an opinion, the fitness industry can be, and the coaching industry can be, quite a serious place at times. How important do you think it is to have that light-hearted outlook on it and have a bit of fun as well?
I think it's important, and you're right. Like there's some very serious stuff out there, and it gets really heated, especially about stuff that doesn't actually matter at times. And you're like, oh man, people get wound up about, and I see why. I know why people get wound up about things, but it's frustrating for coaches who are decent coaches out there, and then they see like these nonsense people just spouting nonsense, and it's like, wow, and they get really angry about that, and then they'll make content about that, and then you just feed that person because you just made content about that, and then they wonder why there's no engagement. And it's like, well, if you just stop doing that, it's just hard to do sometimes, and then try to get across what the right things are within your content for your audience, and do it within your own style, your own tone, your own manner. Like we've touched on that point of view marketing in terms of how you can shift that to get your own point of view across, share your own opinions, thoughts and feelings. And that's really important, because then you become you as you're a personal brand. And that's what a lot of this stuff is. It's not a business in terms of like it's faceless. It's you're the person involved in it. And point of view is massive. And I will always bang on about this, always to coaches, is like, stop just sharing those posts that are like, here's how to work out your calories, or do you want here's how much protein you need to eat for building muscle. And like, people have done that to death now, and people can Google it anyway. So how can you say that information, or how can you have a take on it that is your own take, and then you can still share that information, but do it in a way that is unique and specific to you, or don't do that, because I don't think people necessarily need to know that anymore. I think people need to connect with the coach as a person, and then you've got all the stuff on your content, hopefully, in terms of proof and everything, and you can showcase that, so they know you can help them. they need to connect with you and trust you then that you're the right person. So you doing another Canva post of like, here's an infographic on like protein sources. They're like, fucking it. And then you get annoyed because you're like, oh, no one's interacting with my content. I'm like, well, what do you expect? There's so much content out there now that in order to cut through that noise becomes even more hard. So you might as well have some fun with it at the same time, right?
I completely agree with you, and this isn't me like believing that I'm above, like not above anybody, but things have been overdone. And sometimes when I sit and I'm like writing down what I want to get out of my content in a week, obviously a lot of my clients come to me for fat loss. And so to niche down on that, I could go into calorie deficit more. But every man and their dog has got a calorie deficit calculator now. And then I could go, okay, well, what's the next thing on the list that I'd maybe chat about if that person was my client? It would be okay, how much protein are you getting in your diet? You just put in protein on your search bar on Instagram, it would be thousands, wouldn't it, of individual posts explaining how much protein's in chicken, blah, 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 and how you can get extra protein into your diet. And those things aren't really there. If you don't make enjoying your own content, the likelihood, in my opinion, is that your watchers, your potential clients, the people that are even just following you on Instagram aren't going to enjoy it as well, if you ask me.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Like whenever you create a piece of content, think how would you react if you saw it, right? If you were scrolling, what would you do? Just scroll back on, then you know the answer to what you're creating there. And I know it's hard because it's like this pressure to get content out there. And it's like if you don't, you've got to have a presence in that. But I feel if you're just doing it as a tick box exercise and you're not getting what you want from it anyway, so spend a bit more time, like you mentioned there, like calorie deficits, protein, yeah, we know that. But how can you then know that audience a little bit more? Because not many of them are sat there going, "Oh, need to know how much protein I need to eat like today." They're probably aware of it, but they're probably thinking about other things like what's going on in their life at that time. Like, oh, I've got like kids to pick up in the moment. When am I going to get the dinner on? When am I going to go and like train? Oh no, I'm just going to do that. I'm not going to do that again. So there's probably a lot of other stuff that's you need to understand, not you, but like the people coaches need to
No, I
understand
get
what's
it.
going
Yeah,
on in their
100%.
life.
Yeah, no, it's definitely relevant to me as well, Dan. Don't worry about that. Like I said, I'm no expert, but I complete again. You see when you've been a coach and you're helping people lose body fat, and I'm the same. You see the scenarios that affect people's lives, and those
Yeah,
are the things that when you speak about, even to them, that you see they see your understanding of what they're going through, and then
yeah,
they resonate with you. I completely agree with you as well that, and again, just the people that I've had a relationship before. So people who trust, maybe like listened to podcasts or they know me from around the area or that maybe we're just friends. They tend to be the people that then they resonate with what you're saying more. Then they inquire about you and what you offer, and then you start working with you, and they're the people that get the best results. Apart
yeah,
from when people just come into your world really quickly, they think that you're going to change their life overnight. They're the ones that, yeah, it's great to get those leads. It's really good to get that real quick traction. It's great to get that like. It's great to get that message that's potentially going to lead to you bringing them into your program. But because the relationship's not there and they don't fully, whether they trust you as a coach or not, I'm not sure. Or for whatever reason, that relationship from coach client breaks down a little bit.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Like you explain that really well because there's a process, right? There's a timeline, and you someone comes into your world, and the stuff they're connecting with, okay, they might see your content and things like that. But I remember people, and still now, like people will message or reply to things, the weirdest of things. Like, and I don't do it for that. Sometimes I do test this stuff out, but it's mainly because I just find it funny, or like I think that someone else might find it funny. But and then those people are like they're the ones who will react to it, or they'll message you about it, and it's nothing to do with coaching. It might just be like I eat kiwi skin because I really like it, and people are like, "Oh, you're weird," but like, or like I love music. I love going to parties, and I love like buying vinyl, and like some stuff like that is like people connect off those elements. So showcasing those bits as well as like your expertise in coaching is really important. But yeah, like you mentioned, I remember a call, vividly remember this call. Someone booked in straight away, didn't follow me, didn't know any of my stuff, booked in because someone had told them about it. They just went, well, I'm doing that. And I was in the call probably 2 minutes and I knew this wasn't the right thing. And I just did that thing at the end where I was like, so yeah, if you are interested, like just send me a message. And I knew that they wouldn't. And then I never heard from them again because I was like, I said, you don't know anything about like what we do, because they were going, I want you to just help me lose this weight in this time. I was like, you have no idea. You haven't seen any of our stuff, have you? And they were like, no, I've been referred by this person. I was like, hey, this isn't right for you. Like,
Yeah.
so yeah, you're right with that. You need to get the right people in, because then that impacts your business anyway. Like if you get the wrong people into it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And one thing I've put on my notes as well is I felt personally hit by one of your videos recently, which was really good, and it leads to one of the conversation points today. I actually released a little reel from a podcast where I was saying that I had many people within my coaching community at the moment that are taking on different things. So some are doing weight loss, some are going for their first running challenges, some are in a place where they're literally taking on the confidence to leave their jobs and all these kind of things, right? And in the video I said, most coaching mentors would say that, Harry, you need to niche down. And I said to these coaches, like hypothetical coaches, I don't want to. But one of the videos you've released very recently very much goes at that point of niching down, making sure that you're being specific. And I'd love you to explain why you think that's important, because I'm here to listen, by the way.
Yeah, it's look, I get the pressures. I understand it, and I understand how difficult it is, because at times, right, you need to run a business, and also if someone's like, I want to work with you, and I'll pay you the money, and you're like, yeah, take and I know everyone does this at the start. People, you will do it. You will work with more people outside of that scope, and I always define it as like a dartboard. So think about the bullseye as like that's the niche, and then at the start, your darts will be, potentially like hitting the wall, and then like
Yeah.
get closer and closer. So and you think of niche as this thing that is, it's got to be this age bracket, and they're a man or a woman, and they're busy, and then they're a professional, right? It's actually nothing to do with that. It's more of an understanding about how that person is, and also then the values that connect you to them, and also how your expertise and everything comes in. There's a load of factors, right? But by being able to define your niche and get a bit clearer on it, everything becomes easier, because your marketing becomes easier, your message to connect, the content that you create becomes easier, because you can then shape it around that person. So when people struggle with content creation or ideas, or it's normally because they're not clear on who they're trying to market to. So do that and you'll have endless ideas. And what normally happens is you'll just scroll and you doom scroll in, and you're like, oh, that's a good idea, I'll create a post on that. And then what you're doing is you're creating content not for your audience, you're creating it for off the back of something you've seen. And then it might even be a great post, but you've just diluted your message because it's not really specific to that audience. So I'm a big fan of like taking ideas and getting inspiration and things like that, but then have your own base where it's like, this is my audience and these are the things I need to talk about. And then when you start to market that way, like I say, everything becomes easier, and then you can define your tools off that. Like lead magnets become easier because you can make it for that specific audience, and then more people do the lead magnet because it's really relevant to them, rather than just, I've got a guide to calories, cool. Or like, here's my fat loss guide, right? Brilliant. So having stuff that's specific to that audience, it makes that easier. And then when you get those people in, like, because you're getting the right type of people in for your coaching, you get better outcomes with them, which then magnifies your marketing again, because you can then talk about those outcomes. Then you attract more people like that. It's like, well, that's the cycle, right? So yeah, it helps with everything. And then even if you take it the next step further, it's like, oh, you want to create an email marketing campaign, or okay, cool, you know who it's for. You can then have the sections within that campaign, or the automation that is relevant for that audience. Or you want to create an ad campaign, wicked, we know exactly who this is going to be for. And we can target those people now with ads. Like we can get really specific with the details we use. And if you don't know who you're targeting, then what's the point in this over here? Because people are, I just need to run ads. Well then, no, do you know who you're trying to speak to? No, but just, if I run ads, it will be great. Probably not. We're going to be more of a pain, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my explanation. I don't know if that made sense. But
No, it definitely does. And what all I'm thinking about as well is I saw somebody say recently that unfortunately, in the UK and in America, which are the statistics that are released more people are becoming overweight. The other statistic is that type 2 diabetes is on the rise in both places as well, and more relevant for us being in the UK, right? But I know the US stats are the ones that tend to get released the most and stuff because of Meta and whatnot. And then the other one is that mental health, unfortunately, is on a huge rise as well. And whether you can, I personally believe that there's a huge correlation between the two. So because the physical health is on the decline, so is people's mental health as well, which therefore means that there is more people to help. But to categorize them all in one in one pool of people, in one bucket of humans, and say this message is going out to all of you millions, actually is a is probably a bit of a waste of time. So I'm talking to myself here, really. Whereas actually, if you specify who it is really that you want to work with, whether it be people that have started their fitness journeys already, maybe somebody like a novice in fitness or a novice in running who's looking to go to the next stage potentially, is something that like it's just been crossing my mind recently. Then that then takes a pool of people from that bucket or circle, whichever analogy we're going to go with, and put them in your own, which means that you can talk to them a little bit more freely.
Yeah, and that makes sense in terms of the. I think on that I think of the reel now that you're on about, because I think in there, like I mentioned around, even when you work really hard, like to be known for the specifics, you still have to work really, really hard to be known for that, right? So then
Mm.
to the idea that you can just then help everyone becomes really unrealistic. So, you know, even to get to that point where they know you for this thing, that takes a lot of work, right? And the quote that was in there was like the being seen by 30 good eyes. If you're not known or seen by 30 good eyes, then you're going to want like 30 million.
You got it. Yeah, you've
Yeah.
got it. You've got the post. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So that was a storyteller, a British storyteller, that quote. I can't remember his name, but yeah, really stuff like that. And I like I said, I get that at the start you probably are going to do a little bit more of that, but then use that as an opportunity to really define who you want to work with. And it's that can change, right? Like I think people feel like, oh, this is my niche, and then they're like, I got to stay with this niche. And you can change stuff, right? You can do whatever you want at any point. Like just so don't get fixated into it. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a couple more questions related to your mentoring stuff, and then I want to talk to you about you. Um, at the start of the pod, I wrote the note down here. You said that all of the stuff with regards to the profile and the and your blurb about yourself and your photo doesn't really matter. But on your social media, what does matter? If you was to say for your clients, the things that do matter for them on their profiles, on their content, within their content, what would you say does really matter?
It's a good question. So it's uh, it depends on the platform, doesn't it? But I think we can have like a broad general understanding of what's important if we take Instagram as an example, because most people are going to be using that, right? But so like we mentioned before, the being able to see who this person is and it's clear and it's inviting, feeling like it's an approachable place to be. I think that's like a goes without saying. I think that should be. But to be fair, I do see a lot of stuff that's not like that. So that's important. Making sure it's clear who you are. You've got a name. You've got a picture, not just a logo.
Mm.
And then with the bio, just don't overthink it. But basically, if I can look at your bio and go, I could just find that in anywhere else, then you probably want to change it. I help people lose weight without giving up their favorite foods. Okay, cool. Probably want to maybe tweak that a little bit and maybe add some of your own personality into it somehow. But then the main thing for me is like, can I go into your content and can I see pretty much instantly what you do? Is there proof of that? Can I get an understanding of you as a person and figure out a little bit about the services you offer? And do I have to scroll for about 5 minutes to find anything about your clients or what you do? I think that's a really important one for me. I like to think that I try and do this with coaches as well, is make sure that there's elements of social proof within like that first kind of 6 to 9 posts if you're thinking about Instagram, because you don't want people to scroll all the way down to find stuff that I know you might have stuff in there, but I think if it's really obvious that you've got social proof and it just threads throughout your content, then you're backing yourself up to say that, yeah, this is what I do and here's proof of it. That's probably the biggest one for me. And then, yeah, the content itself, making sure it's in line with the audience that we've been talking about, making sure you understand it. And even like stuff like pinned posts, I don't get too caught up on it. You're like, I need these pinned posts, they've got to be specific, they've got to be like about me, coaching program, and then whatever. Like, maybe you could have some fun with it. Just, you know, you don't have to be too rigid with that. So yeah, I'm not hard and fast with like, these are the rules.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in general, there's a lot of you know it, like you get the DM, the cold DMers dropping into, well, I do anyway, dropping into my DMs telling me how they can make my social media grow by 10,000 and book me 100 calls here, there, and everywhere by doing these said processes. That obviously is a massive secret and a huge amount of ingredients to be able to achieve it. That for you, it kind of fits into your personality, and I hope you don't mind me saying that. Really, you go with a very much a laid back approach towards it, and almost in some respects when it comes to sales, which, or marketing, let's use that word for it, a slower approach as well, rather than going heave ho, here's all of the trending topics, here's all of the trending ways to make your social media grow by 10,000 people overnight. Actually, if you just slow down a little bit and slow down your marketing to the people you really want to work with, the process kind of unravels as in itself.
Yeah, it's a weird one for people to get their head around, because when you say anything like slow marketing, they're like, oh, but what is that? You know, it's slow. So I need stuff to happen now. I'm like, well, yeah, it doesn't mean that we don't take action now and we don't look for things that can happen now. But the very core of slow marketing is that you build and create an environment where your audience can come to and feel safe, and they're in your audience, they're in your environment, and they can be nurtured, and you can feel like there's a connection there. Like, people see their social media as a, like, oh, these are clients, like they're potential clients. Actually, you should see your social media as a community. So start to think of your following as a community. You'll start to engage differently, rather than like, these are potential clients. I'm like, okay, cool. And it's just a case of like putting your rod in and waiting for one to be caught. And we're not thinking about them as humans anymore. We're starting to think of them as numbers and spreadsheet and leads. And we might, I mean, I use the term leads, but once we start to like overdo that use of that, you start to forget them as a person, right? So dehumanizing the people in front of you is a big thing I see. And that's what leads a lot of coaches to trouble, because they forget that, and then they're just doing the next quick thing. And like you mentioned, those people who slide into your DMs and do that stuff, firstly, what they'll do is they tell you, oh, I really like your message or your style, and then they will absolutely just insult you. You know, go, but hey, you could be doing this and this, and you're like, nah.
Yeah.
So one thing, you're going, you haven't taken a chance to look at anything, because I know, but then you're just going to insult me and say, I can help you out. And this happens every day, but like, I screenshotted them, I haven't used them yet. This guy was like, he basically did the same thing what I mentioned there. And then I went to his profile and he had 2 posts. I opened one of the posts up, and it was an AI generated old dude speaking, and it was just utter, it was so shit, it was so bad. And I was like, you have the audacity to come and insult me, and then this is your and I'm like, no, man. So yeah, I'm going to use it as a piece of content this evening.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing that one for sure. Love it. I think like we've covered a lot there, and it's been really valuable for me. I'm sure it's gonna be valuable to the coaches and mentors that I have listened to the podcast as well, being in the environment and with the friends that I have around me as well. I know this will be really useful for them. But I do want to speak about you as well. I know you've got a lot going on. You're a parent, you're a coach, you keep yourself fit as well. What are the, if you were to say 3 things that you do on a daily or regular basis that make sure that you've got your energy to be able to give to your clients, to your family, your friends as well? What are the 3 things that keep you top dog?
It's a great question as well. I have a structure, so I have like a real designated routine. So, and this comes from, I think, just being in like the services and things like that. It's like, these are times when you do stuff, like this is when you eat, this is when we do the training, this is when we do it. And I take that and I've just evolved it to what I do now. So I always start at the same day, at the same time every day. I will almost have breaks at the same time every day, and then I'll finish at the same time. So for me, keeping that structure, and okay, it gets pushed sometimes, but having a a discipline around that's really important. And then training, I feel like training is a big part. I don't train as much as I used to, and that was something for me to get used to after having a child. They shift your whole routine, surprisingly.
Yeah. Did you
My
find that
days,
tough?
yeah, because my days before where I'd get up, I've always been up early. I do all my work in pretty much all my good my work I need to be really productive about is done in the morning. So I'll be up at like 5:15, and then I'll be working from 6 till 9 was like a real big block of work. And then now I can't do that anymore. So yeah, I had to change that. So if you just adapt to it, and now it's about still being able to get my training in, but I train less frequently. So I try and get in 3 like training sessions a week. And I've started to reintroduce swimming into my week as well now, which I used to swim a long time ago. That was when I was growing up, that was all I did. So
Project Ocean Man.
yeah, I wanna do the Ocean Man, which is 10K open water in the sea. So yeah,
Exciting. Do you
yeah,
do you find so a big part of my coaching program, the 100% program, is that people find their own challenge. That's kind of the end goal. Yeah, it could be from anything from doing their first 5K all the way up to doing a triathlon or along those lines. How important to you is it having something that you're chasing in your life, like a goal to aim
yeah.
towards?
It's a good again. I really like this question because that for me, I think when I haven't had a goal, then I've felt that stuff has been it just like slips a little bit. Like things start happening, and I know I haven't got a focus in terms of a goal, and that could be the physical goal. I think is really important, but then having goals for personal and your business life as well. So having those goals is really key. But having a physical one, it means that you're taking yourself away from that stuff you do day to day. Like I'm sitting here and I spend a lot of time in this room talking to people like this, and that for me can get a little bit um, you can only do so much of that. Even though I love it, it's like it still will drain you a little bit, and it's lonely. Like this job, even though I speak to people every day, is very lonely. So I'm a big fan of like having the in-person stuff as well. But so when I can have a focus on like a physical goal, it means that I take myself out in the environment and then go. I swim for a best part of an hour, and I can't open my phone. I can't look at stuff, and I'm like, right. So I'm just there being present. So that's really important for me. And yeah, the third one, I can't think of the third one.
That's no, literally perfect. I think like to completely resonate with you there on the swimming. So running is my endurance thing, and with the creation of lovely smartwatches, I can leave my phone at home for my long
Yeah,
distance runs now. I don't need my phone because worst case scenario, I'm never that. If I was to go out and run in the Sahara Desert, of course, I'd probably take my phone with me. But because the likelihood is now, if I was to get injured or if I was to get hurt, somebody's going to see me. I'm not very far away from somebody that I can knock on the door, blah, blah, blah. But actually leaving my phone in the house for an hour and a half, 2 hours for a run, when you leave it there, it's almost like a bit of a relief because again, you and I are aware, podcast, trying to make content, speaking to clients, whatever it is that we do regularly throughout a day, it always kind of leaves you thinking, doesn't it? You're doing some work, maybe making it like for me, making a new training for my clients or whatever. It's always there, like to just look at and be like, oh, okay, this person needs this now. And then you go and sort that out. When you leave it at home or when you leave it in the locker at the pool or whatever you're doing, it's actually quite a nice feeling. Do you get that?
yeah. Do you remember when it all went down? Like, so it's you can log in Facebook,
Yeah,
Instagram.
yeah, yeah,
It's just like best time.
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
The weird
Um,
one because I got locked out of really genuine just chatting now, but I got locked out of my Facebook a few weeks ago, and even though I knew deep down that it would sort itself out, there was just that little bit of fear within me that I was missing something. Not missing something in terms of I'd miss what Sally'd had for dinner that evening. I was missing like a potential new lead, or somebody dropped me a DM about their coaching program and I couldn't respond to them properly as a coach, blah, blah, blah. All the fears that every decent online coach would have, right, were all wrapped up within that logging into Facebook. And I think it is like we could, again, like I say, I've not been in the industry a long time, but that could be a huge change, is the reliance on somebody like myself, somebody like yourself, on the actual online sides of just communication in general, rather than that one-to-one thing that we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, it's like, I think it's quite, I love social media. Brilliant. I use it. I think it's a great tool, and I think for connection and with business and everything, I think it's a brilliant thing. But I can see the negative sides to it. But I think that you have to use it with intention. And there's, if you're someone who struggles with that stuff, and in terms of distraction, and because you're consuming a lot, right? But I feel like if you can separate yourself from that and still have those moments, and I think this is where, like we were chatting about, having the ability to move away from that and do other stuff and experience like other things, gives you the creativity to then come and create content. And whenever someone can't create content because they're like, I can't think of anything, it's normally because they're just consuming so much stuff. So you get out and have some real life experiences. One thing slightly related to this is like, I don't know if you're into like your kind of like music, house music or anything like that, but I
Yeah, I
go
like
to
a bit of house, mate. Yeah,
um,
yeah.
these events now, and it's just like people standing still filming with their phone. And I think that's at concerts as well, but I notice it's so much more now. And no one's really, I go back like 10, 15 years to before that was a thing, and it was just the atmosphere, and it's just so different. And some of the things I go to now, they've started, got back from Ibiza about a month ago, and they still got a sticker on here, but they put a sticker on your phone when you're going, and like, if you get your phone out, it's just that people just look down on you basically. And it was just, a different atmosphere. It's so good. It's like, yeah, experience things, and then you'll have more things to talk about.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And being a huge football fan myself as well, I believe that there's this huge chat around why I'm a Chelsea fan as well. So our home atmosphere is horrendous. And not to make this a chat about football, because that's not what it's about, but it's about the being in the present moment. And I get really irritated when, and I understand why it may be somebody's first ever experience of a Premier League match or an FA Cup match, what Champions League, whatever it is. But the atmosphere dies because people are more interested in doing this to record whatever's going on the pitch, rather than watching it and being involved in what's around them, than actually the experience itself. And I don't know, maybe when these phones have been out like long enough, people will get used to the fact that they can just get it out and take a photo and whatnot, rather than taking in the actual experience. But it's definitely something that is frustrating. It's for just in a general atmosphere sense of things. Even I don't know like how Glastonbury is going to be this year, right? Because how many people there are going to be having their phones out and stuff? But that's literally around the corner. But I think it definitely takes away the connection with the other people and with the event that you're at.
Yeah. And you're never going to watch that video again, right?
No.
I've done it. I've been there filming, and I'm like, never watching that.
Yeah, it just like buffers, doesn't it? I've got some videos from like a concert I went to 2 years ago, and you try, even if you was to try and watch it, it's saved in the cloud somewhere, and it don't even load on your phone anyway. So yeah, definitely going away from that one now. In terms of the project Ocean Man, then just to touch on it before we wrap things up, how much training have you got to put in to do that 10K, Dan?
I don't even know, to be honest. Like swimming for me is not. It sounds really not big headed, but it's because I swam for so long. When I get back in, it's like a thing of like riding a bike. So for me, I just need to build up the endurance again. So it feels easy for me. I'd rather swim than run. Right, I'm happier in the water. So I think in terms of training, it's just building up the endurance. And I've got a coach I work with on this, and we're obviously the very start of this now. But the one I'm looking at is in October, so I'm like, eesh, it's I know it
Wow.
sounds, it's still not that long. But if I can get in two to three sessions a week, I'll be fine.
Yes, let's go. What's your biggest challenge with it? Is it finding the time?
Yeah, yeah, it's just the time, because now it's fine, but then I know that there's going to be times where we'll probably build up the distances in the sessions. So that's going to need me to carve out maybe 2 hours, 3 hours, maybe at some time. So yeah, but we'll see how it goes.
Love it, man. Well, I wish you the best of luck with that challenge. I'm going to take us to the final two questions of the 100% podcast today with the episode with you, Dan. First one, nice and easy, is what is on the cards aside from Project Ocean Man for you for the rest of 2024?
So we've got a few exciting things happening with our mentoring in terms of the partnerships we're involved in. So there's a few things there that are happening, which is going to be really exciting to be able to just be able to get in front of, or to be able to work with more coaches in this area, because we're not really we don't see us as like one of the big, because there's other people do similar stuff, but we do things slightly differently. So I'm excited about the partnerships we're creating, because for me, having those connections is a really big part of but we talked about slow marketing. It's just building connections like that. So that's something exciting that we're building at the moment. And then yeah, other than that, just trying to raise a 1-year-old and still maintain my sanity and not fall out with my wife or get divorced or
Perfect. I think they sound like pretty legitimate goals, mate. And again, I wish you the best of luck with that, especially with the wife thing. That sounds quite an important one to you. The final question of the show, the most traditional one, the one I love asking the most, is what is the greatest bit of advice you've ever been given?
Yeah, this one I've thought about a lot, and I distilled it down to I don't know who said this originally, but it's to be able to seek to understand before you are understood, or something like that. Because that's got me out of so many different places, and that in all areas of life, not just online. Easy, because it's easy to say if you get like someone comments on your post or a troll you or whatever. It's a hard thing to do, to not react to that. But if you can actually take a moment to actually try and understand where that person's coming from, you create space to them actually not react in the way you do, because nothing happens if you react in that way. So out of that instance, it's really important. But also from a coaching perspective, and also coaching, it makes sense because you need to be to really understand that person first, and empathy is a big part of this. But then that transfers into marketing, because if you can use empathy through your marketing and you can really understand where people are at, then it's easier for you to convey your message, rather than you just going, this is what you need to hear this. This is the stuff you need to do. And they're just like, they just push back on it. As soon as there's resistance, like I always do this thing when we have our live days, is like push your hand, or put your hands together. And then when you're pushed one against the other, what happens is that this happens. And actually what should happen is your hand should push, right? But when we push against something, there's resistance to it. So by seeking to understand first, you can then be understood a lot better. So that's my one.
Oh, yeah, I love it. Really, really good point to finish off the show. Dan, where can people come and find you if they want to see more about you and what you offer to coaches online?
I'm all over Instagram, so Dan Strong Collective, or the website is strongcollectivementoring.com. And yeah, the best places really. Yeah.
Perfect. If you have enjoyed today's episode with myself and Dan, please go over to Spotify and Apple Podcasts and drop this show a 5-star review. It does go a long, long way to helping the show. And if you are watching on YouTube, hello YouTube, like and subscribe below. Again, it just helps a lot with the algorithm thing and gets this show out there further. Thank you very much for watching and listening. I'll be back here with a new episode every Friday. Take care.